What's going on with the Australian dollar and New Zealand dollar? We're seeing some craziness in the markets right now, and what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to hopefully give you some insight as to what I think is going on with the Aussie and the New Zealand and also the CAD, so stay tuned. Before we get too far into the video though, check this out. So I got this little controller. Let's say we want this light behind me to be purple, or we could change it to yellow. That's a really terrible yellow. We could go red, we could go blue. I don't know, kind of cool. What do you guys think? Comment your favorite color and I'll try and put it in the next video. I don't know. I like blue. I think blue is the coolest one so far. Let me know. Do you think red is cool or blue is cooler? You guys let me know. We're just trying to figure it out here. But anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the chart view here and we'll take a look at some of these currencies that are moving dramatically today. So first of all, what is going on with the Australian dollar? Why do we see this thing coming out of the gates so strong here today as we come into NFP? Now, as you guys know, NFP is a big monthly event in which the jobs numbers here in the United States get released. And right now we're seeing a huge amount of optimism come in from Australia and New Zealand. And so what I'm going to try and do in this video is I'm going to show you guys some charts. We're going to talk about what exactly is going on. And then we're going to talk about possibly how we could play this and watch going forward with the Aussie and the Kiwi. So of the two right now, we're actually seeing NZD USD do even better. So both of them have dramatically risen. We've seen a really strong rally for both of these currency pairs this week. But now, you know, what are the plays here? Well, I actually want to, before we jump into it, let's look at Aussie and New Zealand at the same time. Remember, when we're talking about currency pairs, we can cross both at the same time. You can actually see that during all of this rally, we have actually seen the New Zealand outpacing the Aussie dollar, which is why we're seeing AUD NZD coming down a little bit here. So what's actually going on? Well, the big picture here is that we got some very bullish news out of Australia about basically the pandemic and how they are handling it. As many of you guys may have known, the Australian dollar has been on a massive downturn due to the fact that they've had to deal with lots of lockdowns, right? Some other places in the world have experienced lockdowns, maybe more or less. Where I am currently living in the United States, in Georgia, we have like a not too much of a lockdown thing going on. It's actually kind of sort of semi-returning to normal to some degree now that vaccines are rolling out. In other parts of the world, however, there is delays on vaccines and things are coming out slower than other places. So for me, looking at Australia, this makes a lot of sense. We saw some data, we saw some information that the pandemic was being dealt with, and the pace of vaccination in Australia actually came out with some really good optimistic outlook. And that is probably one of the lead driving forces to this major rally on the Australian dollar and the Kiwi dollar. So to me, what this looks like is also a ginormous correctional move. So again, we mentioned, look at the Australian dollar, and you can see this thing is in a steady state downtrend up till today. What you can see is that you've got all three moving averages lined up on the higher time frames. This is a daily chart, and you can see just consistent selling until recently, where we sort of changed out of that pattern. We'll zoom in a little bit and take a look at this. You've got the Australian dollar trending lower, and then just at the start of the week, you can see we've seen a pretty dramatic rise in that Aussie dollar as we've pretty much broken out. Now, the thing here for me looking at the Aussie dollar is that I think it has potential to keep going up. And the reason I say that is because when you get something like this, where you have a major downtrend and the sellers are just in control of a market, if that changes, if you see a dramatic fundamental shift, plus the technical analysis starts to break out to the other direction, it can often lead to big reversal trends. That's actually kind of what we saw. If we go back in time a little bit here, you can see we had this scenario just recently play out with the Australian dollar. We had a dramatic uptrend, right? Buyers were everywhere. Everything that dipped on this thing was getting bought by the bulls. And then we shifted once things became basically lockdown heavy in Australia. We saw Australia sell off for several months. So I'm not necessarily saying that the Australian dollar and the Kiwi dollar are going to rally for the next several months, but I am saying that it does seem like there are plenty of signals here that are showing bullishness may be here to stay for the Australian dollar and the Kiwi dollar. Now, if I had to pick between the two, I'm actually going to be picking more likely the NZD USD. Couple reasons why. One of the main ones, however, being that the central bank in New Zealand has been talking about looking to raise rates. Now, they paused their bullish sentiment on raising rates just recently, which caused a pretty dramatic sell-off in response to some of the rising cases in, I believe it's spelled or pronounced Auckland, but I'm not exactly sure. I'm not from New Zealand. I'm from pretty much the other side of the world, but I'm doing my best here. So the idea is that the change in vaccine rollouts in these places and the possible, declining rate in COVID cases could actually be a very big bullish catalyst for things like the Kiwi dollar. And them talking about rate hikes is always going to be a positive thing for a currency, because when you have rate hikes sort of being rumored around, thrown around, that leads to demand for that underlying currency. Remember, rate hikes are the central banks basically setting the monetary policy. It is a form of tightening monetary policy, which shows basically confidence in an economy and basically the central bank looking to sort of slow down the growth because it's so positive, right? That's the idea, at least. We are seeing that rumor coming out of New Zealand. So for me, the New Zealand dollar may be a buy on things like this. Maybe a dip back, a retracement, maybe 0.7050 could be interesting looking for long side. And I do think that a reasonable target for the Kiwi dollar could be a return back to those pre-lockdown fears up there at 0.73. So that is my opinion there on the Kiwi dollar and the Australian dollar. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Which one do you think is better? One more thing I wanted to talk about here is Aud Nzd, and then before I forget, I'm going to say it out loud. We got to take a look at dollar CAD as well, because both of those are of interest to me. So Aussie, New Zealand. I just mentioned that if I were to choose between the two, I would choose New Zealand. And you can see, so would the market. For the last several months, we've actually seen the AUD NZD go down. What does that mean? That means that people are buying the NZD and shorting the Aussie. So for me, I think that this trend is more likely to continue than not. I've actually been bearish on this trend for a while. So I just think that the most likely scenario is that we continue to see that sort of outpacing of New Zealand at the time being. Now, again, I can be wrong. Please don't take my word as sort of like a guarantee that price is going to do anything, because I am not a financial advisor. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your account. I'm just sharing my opinions and my take on the markets, and I encourage you to do your own research. One more thing I want to talk about is dollar CAD. So coming into this end of the week, we do see dollar CAD throwing itself underneath this support level. And this is a big deal, because let's look at the 4-hour chart for a moment. And you guys, we've got a pretty interesting scenario happening here on the dollar CAD. We're seeing the Canadian dollar strengthen. And this actually makes a lot of sense when you look at stuff like oil, which is up dramatically today. Remember, oil usually trades higher when there is optimism in markets, when things are looking positive, because that means that there's generally going to be a bigger demand for oil to some degree. If you know that, the markets are going to be opening back up and more places are going to be having vaccines and people resume sort of business, that could create a demand for oil, because naturally there's, supply lines that rely on oil, and there may be an increase in demand. So oil has correlation to, in some ways, Canada, right? So we are seeing the Canadian dollar strengthen as their economy is made up strongly around oil, or not entirely, but largely. So when we see a strengthening in oil, we are also seeing a strengthening in the CAD, which is causing, remember, USD, when we're trading pairs, when we're taking USD CAD and we say, hey, oil is up, so is the CAD, that means that the dollar is down relative to the Canadian dollar. So again, a nice clean breakout there today. Actually, a really impressive move for those of you guys trading the CAD pairs. I am long on CAD yen. I'm going to show you guys that in just a second. So I am long on Canada. Here's CAD yen. I am currently sitting in a position here up over 1660 on this position. Really, really pretty happy with this trade, and looking to see if I can just continue to hold on this. I will be trailing stops. By the way, if you're not in our Discord, I share all the trades that I'm taking. I shared this one inside of our private Discord just recently. I'll show you what the trade alert looked like here really quick. Let me pull that up. Here we go. So I basically said I am long on the CAD. I'm much for the same reasons that we just talked about. CAD looks strong to me overall, especially with the recent FDA full approval of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. Canada was one of the first central banks to announce monetary policy tightening post-pandemic and plans to beginning hiking interest rates. yada, yada, yada. Basically, I was bullish on the CAD. I shared that with members inside of the group, and I am currently sitting in on a pretty good position. We'll see if this can continue to run, but for me, Canada is a bullish market for now, along with Aussie and New Zealand. All of these have been sort of trading similarly recently. Look at that, up to almost $1,700 now, so not bad on that position. With that said, you guys, thank you very much for watching today's video. If this was helpful to you in any way, please do me a favor and hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you want more free trading content in the future, and we will see you back in the next one.